The Pleiades, this is part 2, the Pleiades were very important to them because it was very high in the sky from their latitudes, and it was very close to the ecliptic, so things like the moon would go right through the Pleiades sometimes. It still does. And the Pleiades, one of their beliefs was that their ancestors came from the Pleiades, and the brightest star, with its Alcyone, this one right here, with a period of about 26,000 years. The interesting thing about that is the 26,000 years. Because if you remember right, we know that the precession axis of the Earth, the axis of rotation's motion through the sky, takes about 26,000 years. So it's interesting that they came up with exactly the same number as an astronomical effect. All right. I was talking about at the end of their 52 years after this calendar round, it was a dangerous time, and when the Pleiades came to a certain position in the sky, that's when they knew they would be granted another 52 years. So astronomy was used, and we know the Mayans were very into astronomy, to determine by its location in the sky, if the Pleiades were back, the gods have granted us another calendar round, another 52 years. All right, let's talk about the long count calendar. This is the one that brought about all the big to-do about 2012. This is the interesting one right here. The long count calendar is written as a string of 5 numbers. The same way we write numbers nowadays too. If we write a number like 1,870,256, what that means is we have 6 ones, 5 tens, 2 hundreds, 0,000, 7 10,000s, right? Each of those represents different powers of 10. They did the same thing here, but they had different powers, and each of these were powers of either 20, 18, or 13, and it depended on which one it was. So it's kind of confusing. So this is the way we're going to look at it. So it's always a set thing of 5, well, it can have more than that, but 5 is the standard. So the date of March 13th, 2008 in the long count Mayan calendar is 12/19/15/2/16. Okay. The next day on March 14th, that would turn to a 17, and that would go till 18/19. But once it hit 19, they don't go to 20. Then this one would go up to 3. So that's a base 20 system. We keep moving up. All right. So the way it works is, if I look at this is 16, this is our single places. This is powers of 20, so that's 2 times 20. This one is 18 20s or 360s, okay? And then we go back to 20s again, or 19 20s of 316. And then we go to 12, and after that they're all 12, 12, and they go to 13. Remember, 13 was a special number for them. All right, are you with me? I know this is kind of confusing. The biggest number up here, this 12, this is called a Bahaktun, which corresponds to 144,000 days, okay? Which is about 5,000 years. So when a new Bahaktun, when that digit changed, that was a big deal. It didn't happen very often. It happens every 5,000 years. All right. Now, one of the questions is, if you go backwards, because I will go back here, this is 1,875,000. So we know that it started that many days ago. The good thing about it is when Cortez and them showed up, the Mayans were still keeping their calendar, and they can synchronize our calendar, the Gregorian calendar, to the Mayan calendar. So we have a pretty good idea when it started. Well, it's not exact, but we have a pretty good idea by certain events that happened or occurred, and we can synchronize them. So, one of the things we do is we kind of go backwards and say, well, when did this calendar start? And we can go backwards, and when you go backwards, it was going to be 000, or you can write it as 13,000, because to them, 13 was equivalent to 0. Okay. And if we do that, the most accepted one is the first one right here. Is that it started on the 8th of September, 3114 BC in our Julian calendar. Remember, we didn't have a Gregorian calendar at that point. In fact, we didn't even have a Julian calendar that way, so we went before that, which is slightly different than the Gregorian calendar. Don't worry about it. I don't want to expect you to memorize this, but the key is that it happened about 3114 BC. Now, the Mayan, remember, they were around from about 300 BC to to about 1500. In fact, they're around today, but their peak was about 300 BC to about 1300 AD or CE. And so what we're looking at is that the interpretation here is that it started this 3000 BC. Now when you start a calendar, if the Mayans created their calendar, they would have started their calendar at 0 at some important event, and you count from that specific event. So either their calendar is taken from some other older people that goes back to 3000 BC, which is possible because they have found archaeological evidence that there were people in the Americas up to 20 or 30,000 years ago. But we don't know much about them. Or they counted back to an event, even though it happened at 3000 BC when the Mayans did. They counted backwards to a very specific event which they thought was the beginning. We really don't know. Okay? But by far the top one is pretty much the accepted calendar date for that. Alright, what became interesting, why people are all excited, is remember these before in 2012, this was 12 something something. Well, this was going to turn over, so by December 20th, 2012, this was going to be 12.19.17.19.19, which means the next day this would become 000013. It's kind of like your car odometer when you get to 99,999, and the next thing it turns over and all the zeros come across. That happened on December 21st, 2012, or what we would say is there was a new Bahaktun, which only happens about every 5,000 years. All right, let's talk about the Tree of Life. This was found, and this shows up in a lot of, the people that claim aliens existed and came down to the earth. They say, oh, look, this was an astronaut looking to the sky. That's not the interpretation. This was very Mayan. This explains the Mayans' belief right here in this one tomb. This is the top of the Emperor Pakal's tomb in the city of Palenque. And what you see here in the back, this is the Tree of Life. This is what's called the Saboba tree. And it can also be representative of many things. And so let me start. I think I point them out here. The Ceiba tree is the world tree, or can be representative of the Milky Way in the night sky. If you see the Milky Way, that's representative of the Tree of Life, the tree that links things together. Here is the world of the Emperor. Here's the Emperor here. They have the underworld, and they believe in the sky world. Remember, there were the 3 separate worlds, and the Tree of Life would link these together. This crossing pattern in here, this is the ecliptic, the path of the sun and the moon and the planets. Moon within 5 degrees or so, but the sun and the planets across the sky would follow the ecliptic, and it would cross the Milky Way at that one point right there. Okay. Now, we have to go back to our astronomy here and see how this ties into astronomical events. So this is a representation of the night sky with the Milky Way right here. So this is a picture from the Earth, but it's a picture that shows the whole sky with the Milky Way in it. And then on here, you notice that there's these dark lanes. That's dust in our galaxy, and it's blocking the stars behind it. It's like clouds of dust. Think of it as smoke blocking the stars behind it. Right here, this is right towards the center of the Milky Way, which this is the constellation Sagittarius and Scorpio over here. It's right in here, it's towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And we already talked about this many months ago, but remember that the Earth's axis precesses. The North Celestial Pole makes a circle on the sky which takes 26,000 years to go around. You're like, why are you asking me this? Well, this changes things. Remember, as it turns around, the North Celestial Pole changes. That also changes the position of the equinoxes and the position of where the solstice is, or where the sun is at its extreme points on the sky. And it changes in all these constellations over 26,000 years. So the sun will change positions over the 26,000 year period of when it reaches its maximum or its minimum. So maximum over here is minimum is over on this side. Alright, so the winter solstice, that's actually not drawing right. The winter solstice is over here. Sorry about that. but that would be a change if you watched it. If you watch the sun change, it changes about 1 degree every 72 years. So you'd have to watch it for a long time to notice this change in the sky because of precession. All right. So what's this got to do with the long count calendar? Well, on January 3113 BC, when this started, the sun on the winter solstice is over here, the Milky Way is way over here. But 5,000 years later, the sun on the winter solstice hits right in that dark lane, which is the center of the Milky Way, which is representative of the tree of life, the Ceiba tree for the Mayans. Some people speculated that that's why they started in 3000 BC, because they knew the sun would be hitting this point on December 21st, 2012, and that had to be somehow significant. Does this mean it's significant? I don't think so. A lot of people have made speculations. These are things that came out before 2012, and you can just read them. I think some of these are very interesting. The one that I see here is interesting because he says, believes the alignment will trigger a reversal in the sun's magnetic field. Guess what? The sun's magnetic field flips every 11 years. It's been doing this for as long as we know. So there's nothing special about back on that one day. And it's going to get 20 times hotter. Well, none of that happened. None of that happened, right? These people that keep predicting the Earth is going to be destroyed. Well, guess what? The Earth just keeps going on and doesn't follow their rules. I don't know why. But most of what we know from this is that the Mayans believed everything was cyclical. And so even if there was a cycle ended, a new cycle would begin. And instead of being upset, they would probably just have a big party.